I believe we are live now. So if you guys got the YouTube notification or are watching through YouTube and somehow got directed into this video, please unlike and subscribe if you are already subscribed, and drop a comment down the video telling how you got here, or just you can just drop a hate comment if you don't have any idea how you got here. So starting with today's agenda, I'd like to continue, let's just say start the GRE preparation course. I haven't even opened it in my web laptop or YouTube. To check, I think I should ask. One is for QR, so for the payment of the course, so that I will feel guilty about not utilizing the course that I have already paid for. One is Banjara acted total QR. Until then, let's recap what has been happening in my life till now. As you can already guess, it is not that good. I have not been productive in any sector. And I have got a lot of excuses for it. Maybe I will make a separate live stream on the topic of my excuses for procrastinations till now. That seems like a cool idea. But for today, I'll just talk about my plans for today, and we'll do a quick reaction video on this course. I need your QR code for the link to send me. Don't think.
Hello? Hey, can you guys hear me? Testing. About 14 minutes or something like that. Because they're looking for some certainty. You know, they're willing to pay the $1,500 or the $2,000 or whatever because these companies give a certain path. Now, in my opinion, I don't think it's a great path. The primary reason being they're using their own materials, and I don't exactly agree with the cost, but they do give you a path. So I thought that I would try to give you guys a path, especially if you're new to the GRE. Some of you are not. Maybe you just want to hang out with me. That's cool. Or just kind of gauge your study schedule to my recommendations, something like that. But if you are here, you're new to GRE, I'm basically going to go through a 10-step process. And this was actually harder to come up with than you think. So I mean, we're talking about years of discovery, years of playing around with this, and so finally I kind of came up with this 10-step process. So if there's no questions, are you guys ready to begin? Or are there any questions before we begin? Okay, looks like there's no questions. It's okay. All right, here we go. Step number 1, you have to get the materials. Now, getting the materials is not as expensive as you think because the ETS, which is the company that makes things on the black, so you guys can see. All right, 1 second. Changing the color of my marker. So ETS is the company that makes the test, and they actually have 3 books. You need to get all 3 of these. The first book is called the Official Guide. Sometimes shorthanded into OG, like if you want to be cool. If you want to be cool and hang out with your GRE guys, it's called the OG, and they should know what you're talking about. The second book is called the Verbal Practice Book. And the third one, naturally, is called the Quant Practice Book. These 3 books are essential. You essentially have no option. You have to get them. You must. The good news is you can buy them separately, and it's still pretty cheap. And the even better news is you can actually buy them together in probably the worst named thing I've ever seen in my life. It's called the Superpower Pack. I don't know who came up with this at ATS. Some guy who clearly doesn't have a marketing degree. And the Superpower Pack, I think, nowadays is running something like $35 to $40. So notice already this path is a lot cheaper than kind of the test prep company path. Not only is it cheaper, you're actually using official ETS material. But that's not all. So there's something that ETS released probably about, I don't know, 15 years ago. It's called the Big Book. It's not that easy to get a hold of, but if you do, it's gold. Because what it contains is 27 old GRE tests. Now you might be saying, hey, these old GRE tests, why do I want to use those? And the reason is there's a lot of overlap between the old GRE test and the current GRE, especially with verbal. So the old GRE has very similar text completion and very similar reading questions. The critical reasoning is a little bit too easy in the old GRE, as is the math, but that doesn't mean it's useless. Because let's imagine, for example, you're bad at critical reasoning or you're bad at math, and you don't want to get exactly thrown into the den of wolves or the pool of sharks, and you just kind of want to ease into it a little bit more. Old GRE might not be a bad idea if you want to just take kind of an easier version of those problems, but the actual verbal, the reading and the text completion are challenging, and in my opinion, just as challenging as what you'll encounter on a real test today. So in terms of ETS material, this is all the stuff you want to get that's in paper format, but that's not all. So ETS also has tests, practice tests. Let me kind of list these tests for you guys. So the first 2 tests are actually in the OG. Remember, that's what the cool people say. It's in the OG. In the back of that book, you have 2 practice tests right there. You also have 2 free online ones. These are called the Power Prep tests. The Power Prep tests. You also have 3 paid ones online. And each one of these is $40. Now, that might seem like a ripoff, but let me assure you it's not. Number 1, you're preparing yourself to spend like $100,000 in your master's program. So as long as you can spare the cash, it's not $40. Number 2, you're not going to get a more authentic test experience outside of the ETS paid Power Prep plus test than you are anywhere else. So the reason why it's so authentic is because, obviously the questions are from ETS, the company that makes the test. It uses the exact same software, nothing different. It even grades your writing. So ETS uses a computer system to grade half of your writing. They include this computer system in with the paid Power Prep test, so grades writing. And then finally, maybe most importantly, is these tests came out relatively recently. So these 2 free online ones and the books in the OG, or the tests in the OG, these tests are a little bit older. Now that doesn't mean they're bad, they're still very useful, just like old GRE. But if you want to see the most kind of representative test, it's going to be the paid Power Prep Plus test. So this is all of the ETS official material, but there's a couple other things. So there's actually 2 paper-based tests floating around, and you can find these on my website if you go to more and click on practice tests. So 2 paper-based tests. The problem with these 2 tests is there's a lot of overlap with these online ones. So I've noticed in the past I would recommend these paper-based tests, and then somebody would take one of the online free ones, and they would say that they've already seen a lot of questions. So you have to actually kind of be cognizant of the fact that if you look at the paper-based test, some of those questions will appear on the free online one. And if you want to save those free online ones as a measure or gauge of progress, then you have to be careful at what you look at. So I've been talking your ear off. Let me take a break. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and raise your hand. All right, Miguel, you have a question?
Yes, right. Can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Well, my question was, if I actually buy the big book, the Translational GRE, does it contain the answers in there, or?
It contains the answers, but not the explanations.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so if you look at like the OG, it has the explanations in it, but in my opinion, those explanations are almost useless.
Okay.
It's like the ETS explanation says B is wrong because it's wrong. Okay, I'm not sure how helpful that was, but yeah. So but the actual big book only has the answer choices, that's it. But it does have one other thing that's kind of interesting. It has the percentiles. So it actually tells you how difficult one question is. So take, for example, the answer key will say, oh, the answer is B, and then next to B, they have the number 42. What that means is only 42% of test takers got it correct. Okay. All right, Tal, you have a question?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so I exhaust the Superpower Pack and
Is that
study.
great? Do you love that name?
No, I don't care.
Okay, what's your question?
So I read from the front to the back, and I didn't improve. I think I improved like 1 point for each section. So I'm trying to get my hands on the big book, and I have done the free online ones as well. But I mean, what would your advice be if, I mean, for me to go back to the super PAC, I feel like I recognize the questions, I recognize the answers, and I remember, and so it's not going to do me any good to go back.
Do you like movies?
Sort of.
Okay, do you ever rewatch a movie and notice something different?
Yeah.
Okay, like Inception, for example. That Christopher Nolan movie, I had to watch it 11 times to really get my head around it. So you went through the superpower pack probably incorrectly. What you used it as was practice material, right? You just kind of did the questions.
Yeah.
Okay, so the problem there is you didn't actually go through it deliberately practicing strategies and practicing things that you should employ to improve. So my recommendation would be, get the big book because you do need new material. But at the same time, did you write in the books or not write in the books?
No, I did not write in the books.
Okay, so then what you should do is go through them again, but not doing them as practice problems, specifically doing them as strategies. Okay, does that make sense? So for example, one strategy that I like to teach would be like you identify the sentence function of reading passages. So you actually go to the reading passages, you don't really care that much about the questions, and all you're trying to do is break down the actual function of each sentence in the passage. Because that material is so well written, I promise you, if you go through it again, you're going to learn some really cool stuff. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, another thing you can do again, see, the problem is a lot of people are under the mistaken impression that quantity is better than quality, and that's just not true at all. So yesterday we had a class, or this morning we had a class, and we spent an entire hour going through 2 reading passages, and I guarantee you about 10% of people actually do GRE that way. I think a lot of people, when they do reading passages, their idea of doing them is just doing them. And is that how you went through the superpower pack initially?
Yeah, because I was, just being cocky. I was like, I'm pretty smart, so I should be able to do this. But it just, the score didn't really prove it.
I think you should go through them again with some strategies in your mind that you want to practice. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. All right, let's move on to Mahedi. You have a question? Hello? Not really. I think you need to fix your mic. Why don't you go and fix your mic and I'll answer one more question from Rahul. Rahul, you have a question? Okay.
Like, what exactly do you mean by practicing strategies?
Actually, that's actually one of the steps in this list. Okay. All right, good question. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. So, actually, I have a couple more comments about material. So, should you use third-party material? And the answer for verbal is a resounding no. Right? So sometimes I'll even have students mail me like a question from like half or something, and I typically just ignore the email. I'm not trying to be rude, or I'll just reply, please send me ETS questions. The problem is the verbal in the third-party test prep companies is so badly written. It really is. And the actual people at ETS are so beyond the third-party test prep companies in terms of expertise and in terms of the actual name of the job is psychometrician. And if you look at the salary ranges of the psychometrician at ETS, they're making like a shitload of money. They're making like $200,000 a year because they're so good at what they do. Another thing is ETS has a ton of data, like real data. So like when Kaplan or another company is assembling its data, they're actually using their online materials. But remember, when you're doing that, you're sitting at home, you're having a tea, you're playing with your dog while doing it, and the data is all skewed and kind of corrupted and adulterated. ETS has the only kind of a repository of officially done data, and they can use that to determine if the question's good or if the question's bad. So in terms of verbal, no outside material. But quant is a different story. Of course, ETS is the best, and I'm always going to love ETS. But one quant book that you can probably do, it's called the 5-pound book. It's from Manhattan, and it's really cheap. It's like $12 on Amazon, something like that. The good news about the 5-pound book is it's divided by chapter. So let's say, for example, you're really weak at standard deviation. Well, there's a standard deviation chapter. Let's say you're really weak at word problems. Well, there's a word problem chapter. So that's the good news. And the 5-pound book is really good for like concept building, right there. And then finally, the last note about materials is vocabulary. Unfortunately, ETS does not release any vocabulary material whatsoever. So we're forced to go outside. Of course, I have a list. My list currently has 780 words. So I think it's a pretty good list. All of the words I got from ETS material. But that's not the only good list. If you actually go to my website and then go to recommended resources, right there you can find some other vocab lists that I recommend. Okay? So again, before I move on, any questions about any of the material? Okay, Risky, you have a question?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
So I just want to ask, like, to learn the verbal, aside from practicing from ETS books or learning from vocabularies, do you think that it's helpful to listen to podcasts sometimes just to get a context of the podcast? Sometimes like they use complicated or sophisticated words.
I wouldn't say podcast, I would say reading. Reading is probably much more beneficial, but only if you have time. So if you're taking the test in like a month, I'm not sure how much reading you can do in that month to really improve. But if you have like 6 months to take the test, then I would probably spend 20 to 30 minutes a day reading either from All Daily. That's pretty good. The Economist is pretty good.
Yeah, but sometimes like when I read the Economist, like I don't understand all.
Yeah, because it's good, right? It's like so well written or it's so complex, it's hard to understand, I know. Another one is like the New Yorker. So all of this stuff is pretty good. Now, if you ask me, how did I learn my vocab? Well, I learned my vocab through years and years of reading. So it's actually kind of difficult for me to answer this question because like I'll have a lot of students who say, how do I improve my vocab? And I say, well, for me, I read for 30 years, for example. For you, I think, or not you, but the general student you, I think the vocab is going to be kind of a personal thing. Maybe for you, podcasts work. And if they do, great. So my kind of go-to answer is to experiment.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, makes sense?
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. So step number 2 is you have to learn the structure of the test. And the reason you have to learn the structure of the test is because there's no surprises on test day. So there's actually 2 varieties. So variety 1 will look like this. So variety 1, you'll start with the issue essay, and then you'll go to the argument essay, and then you'll do Q, V, Q, V, Q. That's variety 1. Variety 2, the writing is exactly the same. You start with the issue essay, then the argument essay, but then you do V, Q, V, Q, V. Can somebody explain why they have these 2 varieties? Anyone want to volunteer? Why do they have 2 of these varieties? All right, okay, here we go. Abdullah?
Oh, Greg, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so one is basically 2 quant and 2 verbal are actually scored, and one is just, you can say, they're just trying to see how hard or how difficult the questions are, and they're just trying to dodge.
Yeah, they're using an experimental section. So in the first case, we have 3 quants, right? But only 2 of these count, right?
Yeah.
Do we know which 2?
No, we don't know.
No, yeah. So you have no idea. So you actually have to try your hardest on all 3. Sometimes a student will ask me, hey, this feels difficult. I think it's the experimental. And I said, okay, even if it is the experimental, are you going to not do it? Are you going to take that chance? Of course, the answer is no, right? Because you don't know for sure. And then, so basically, when I took the test, I just imagined that the experimental didn't exist. And of course, down here, you have 1, 2, 3 verbal, and then one of those is going to be the experimental as well. Okay, so very good. We have a question, Marine. Can you hear me, Marine? I think you have to turn on your, or unmute your microphone.
Sorry, that was accident.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, no problem. Okay. All right, so the next thing that I want you guys to realize is when I took the test, I didn't imagine it was one test. I imagined it was actually 7 tests. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And the reason I did this is it was almost like a psychological trick in my brain. It was like, I'm not taking one 4-hour test. I'm just taking a 30-minute test. Okay, and then I'm moving on. All right, now I have another 30-minute test. All right, okay, move on. Now I have another 30-minute test like that. And the reason I do that psychologically is it's almost like a to-do list. It's a to-do list where basically, okay, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Whereas in my opinion, if you think about the test as this big, colossal beast, it becomes much more intimidating. And like 2 hours in, you're like, oh my God, I have 2 hours to go. It's like when you fly international and you're on the plane for like 12 hours, and then you check your phone, or you check the time, you still have 6 hours to go, you just want to like, kill somebody because you're just dying on that plane. Same thing. For me, whenever I deal with it in chunks, 30-minute chunks, it's like, it just feels easier to me. Because that's number one. That's the first thing I want to emphasize. The second thing I want to emphasize is you actually need to be able to break down the sections. So for example, when you have a quantitative section, it's going to look like this. The first 8 questions, 1 to 8, are quantitative comparison, which is a type of question on the quantitative section. 9 to 20 are what they call problem solving, which means A, B, C, D, E. And then somewhere in the middle here, you're going to have what's called a numeric entry, when basically you actually have to type in the number. So you actually have to be aware of that because I don't want you to be surprised on test day. And then for the verbal, the structure is 1 to 6 is what they call text completion. And then about 7 to 12 is going to be reading. And then 13 to like 16 is going to be sentence equivalence. And then finally 17 to 20, we're going to finish with reading. Okay, any questions about the structure? Okay, Joanna, go ahead. Still figuring out the mic? I think you have to hit unmute. There you go. Hey, Joanna. Yep, hey, how are you?
Hey, good, thank you. And not a question, but just a comment. It was just an experience that I had with the GRE. I was tested verbal 3 times in a row. So yeah, I do agree with as far as stamina. And I scored really low in the verbal just because I always thought that quantitative and verbal was going to switch on and off. But I was tested verbal 3 times when I started in the beginning, and I was just getting very test exhaustive. And
I don't mean to doubt you, but you're sure. You're positive.
Yeah.
Okay, so my guess is something went wrong with ETS's system because I've had, I don't know, hundreds of students in the past. I've never heard of it not alternating. But I know ETS has issues. I'll give you an example of an issue that I saw with a recent student. So typically on the quant, if you do well in section 1, like 16, 17, 18 correct, you should have a difficult section 2. But I had like 5 students or so last month who did very well in section 1, but in section 2 was easy. So something went wrong with the system. So I know the system can be wonky at times, or you are not exactly a rare case. Like, maybe there's others like you, but I would say from what I've heard or what I've experienced, they alternate. So I'm sorry you got kind of surprised by that. Yeah. Did you ever call ETS and be like, hey, what the hell?
No, I mean, I just kind of just took it as just, I mean, it's kind of nice to bring it up actually, just because, I mean, I just always kind of thought that that was something that was expected. I didn't know that this was supposed to be a normality of how things switch on and off.
Yeah, I think you either got unlucky or there are other people out there like you. I just haven't met them.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, I just wanted to share that with you.
Yeah, thank you. Any kind of data I can get about the experience is great, so thank you so much. All right, so let's move on to step number 3. Okay, so step number 3 is you have to learn the question types and take a diagnostic test. A lot of people skip this step, and it actually doesn't really make sense to me. If your goal is to study efficiently, what that means is you have to be aware of your strengths and weaknesses. And the only way to be aware of your strengths and weaknesses is to take a diagnostic test. And diagnostic test, remember, what that means is it's like the initial test. So don't study for a month and then take the test. It really has to be right there in the very beginning because you kind of want to see, as tutors, what you can do cold. I will say one thing though, learn the question types. So for example, on verbal, there's something called a sentence equivalence question where they have a sentence, they have a blank right here, and they have a sentence. And they give you these 6 boxes, and you have to choose 2 of them. If you are not aware of that, and you're taking this diagnostic and you don't know you're supposed to choose 2 answers here, and like let's say you choose only one, even though you kind of understood the sentence and it wasn't hard for you, this is going to be a not very accurate measure of your diagnostic because you just didn't know the directions for the questions. All right, hopefully that makes sense. So what I would do is I would learn the question types and then I would take a diagnostic test. Now, does anyone want to raise their hand? What diagnostic test do you think I would recommend you take? All right, Joanna, go ahead.
ETS.
Which one though, specifically?
Would it have to be the free exam that given to you?
Yeah, so typically what I recommend is you go online. Don't use the one in the book. I want it to be online and to take one of the free PowerPoint tests. Right there. Okay, thank you, Joanna. That is correct.
You're welcome.
All right. Now, one thing I have noticed is a lot of people put off the diagnostic test because, I don't know, is scared the right word? They're basically like inside their, their soul or something, they feel like it's going to be bad. And it's almost like kind of taking off a Band-Aid and looking at your wound. And for some people, that's a little bit scary. But I would remind you that in order to, quote, heal, if we're sticking with this metaphor, you actually have to be aware of the extent of the injury. If you ignore the injury, and we'll use another GRE word, it's just going to fester and just get a little bit worse and worse and worse and worse. So my advice would be, if you fall into this category, confront, your anxiety. Is kind of what I would advise there. Okay, any questions about that? All right, let's move on. Step number 4, use the diagnostic to determine strengths and weaknesses. Now, I've already talked about that, but let's be a little bit more specific. So when we talk about the verbal, what I actually want you to do, first of all, is to divide each section into 2 parts. So reading and what we call the vocab questions. So you're going to have 10 of these and 10 of these right there. And the question is, how many did you get correct on reading? How many did you get correct on vocab? So it's like half and half. Or like, let's say, for example, you get 8 out of 10 on the reading, but you get 2 out of 10 on the vocab. Immediately, this is great data. Because we know that you're probably a really good reader. You just need to really improve your vocab right there. But let's say, for example, you get 1 out of 10 on reading, but you get 7 out of 10 on the vocab. Well, then you know what? I probably would not recommend you go start going through a vocab list, like word by word by word. I just don't know how productive that would be. You probably want to spend a lot of your time on the reading. I think in the initial stages, that's enough. You don't really need to break down which vocab questions you got wrong or which reading questions you got wrong. I think that's probably enough data right there to at least give you a starting point. Now, for the quant's a little bit different. The quant covers 4 categories. It covers arithmetic, it covers algebra, it covers geometry, and it covers data, what they call data. Now, data is the most common question type. You're going to have like 7 of these. You're going to have like 4 geometry, and this is per section. You're going to have like 4 algebra, so it's at 15, and then 5 arithmetic, something like that. These numbers might vary a little bit. What you need to do in your diagnostic is either alone or with help, separate each question into one or more than one of these categories, because sometimes there's overlap, and kind of determine what is your strength and what is your weakness. What I've noticed is a lot of international students are really good at the big 3. You know, we can call these the big 3, but really struggle with the data. So this is kind of a weak point for a lot of students that I've come across. And the reason why that's bad is because there's 7 of these bad boys right here. So you have to be kind of confident in them. What I've noticed with a lot of kind of English native speakers is because a lot of the data questions are reading questions, they tend to do a little bit better because they're just more familiar with the language, but they might need a little bit more improvement in the arithmetic, algebra, and geometry. Now, the good news is ETS has this document called the ETS Math Review Guide. Go ahead and write this down. If you feel like you need any kind of improvement in arithmetic, algebra, geometry, or data, and we're not talking about GRE questions here, we're actually talking about like basic concepts. If you feel like you need any practice in these 4, you definitely want to go through this document right here, and it's free, and all you have to do is Google it. So just to recap, the verbal, I would divide it into reading and the vocab questions, and the quant, arithmetic, algebra, geometry, and data. Okay, any questions about that? Rahul, you have a question?
It's great. Like, what do you suggest for someone who's already started prepping? Like, should we also take a diagnostic test?
Well, that's why I kind of titled this class as, starting with the GRE. But I'm glad you're here. I'm not saying leave. I would advise you to really reflect on your studying and ask yourself if you are studying the strategies or if you're just doing practice questions. If you're just doing practice questions, you need to modify your study to go ahead and implement strategies. You don't necessarily need to do a diagnostic test. Does that make sense?
Yeah, understood.
All right, Abdullah, question?
Hello, Greg, can you hear me?
Sure.
Okay, so Greg, I had this like a general question about reading because as a non-native, I feel like reading is the most difficult part. So my question is like, if you're just going through general reading like you're going through economics, okay, so you read a passage. So how can you be so sure that the way I simplify stuff is the actual stuff that is the economics people are trying to say? I mean,
you can't, not in the Economist, but you can on the GRE. So yeah, that's a good question. The Economist you can, unless you talk to me or somebody else, right, or the author of the article. But on the GRE you can. Why?
Obviously, if you check the answers, it will directly tell you that you got it wrong.
You get immediate feedback, right? So with the GRE, you get immediate feedback, which is why the old GRE is so important, because the old GRE has 27 tests, and each one of these tests has 4 reading passages, so that's 108 reading passages in which you can test the feedback. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean the Economist is not helpful. It is. It's just like you said, it's hard to confirm whether you're going the right path or the wrong path. Yeah, sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, basically I was trying to ask that like how much time that I should be spending on like economics reading and how much time that I should be spending with the big book. Like if I want to like balance the both too.
Sure. When's your test?
Basically about, I've not selected a date, but I want to do it like maybe in December.
In December, so you have what, 2 or 3 months? I would probably be doing maybe 20 minutes a day of the Economist. It would be a very small portion of my prep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would probably be doing mostly GRE reading passages.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, if it was 6 months away, for example, my test is 6 months away, that's going to be a different equation. I might be doing, I might be reading actual nonfiction books, something like *Sapiens* from Yuval Harari, maybe something from Carl Sagan. These are things I like. I like to read about. Definitely a lot of Economist, All Daily, New Yorker. If I had 6 months, but like you said, with December, the Economist and the reading is going to comprise a very kind of small fraction of your prep. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Troy, you have a question?
Yeah, Greg, do you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, would you suggest that we should do the ETS math review guide before taking the diagnostic, or just go into it like you mentioned, fresh or clean slate?
You can do the diagnostic or the ETS math review guide before the diagnostic, but I don't want you to wait a month to do the diagnostic. Like, I don't want me to say, hey, have you done the diagnostic or not? I'm still working through that ETS math review guide. No, that's what I don't want. If you do go down that path, I would say the ETS math review guide maybe 5 days to a week, and then take the diagnostic.
Okay, because I haven't done like that math in so long, so I'll be very rusty.
Yeah. No, I hear this a lot. So like I said, it's okay to admit you're rusty. What's not okay is just putting off the diagnostic so long that we actually can't even determine how bad it is.
Right, I got you.
Okay, makes sense?
Okay, cool, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. So step number 5, you have to make a personalized study and practice test schedule. Now, the reason I put this exclamation point is I think you can imagine, if you look at a lot of these third-party test prep companies, they have these kind of generalized study test prep schedules, which makes absolutely zero sense to me. Number 1, we all have different numbers of hours, or different number of hours in the day. So, for example, a student who's on the summer break has probably 5 to 10 hours a day, but a single mom who has to work and then take care of her kids, put her kids to bed, and is trying to take the GRE late at night so she can get into some program and provide a better life for her family, has maybe an hour or 2. So you have to really, as a first step, take how much time do you actually have? Be honest here. How much time do you have in a day to actually devote to this? That's number 1. And then number 2 is how long until your test? Are we talking about a month? Are we talking about 2 months? Something like that. So this is going to be the personal aspect of the study schedule. However, there is something that I do recommend in general, and what it is basically you have to cover verbal and quant. Unless you're just like really good at the math, for example, or you're a philosophy major and verbal is easy for you. So you have to make sure that you're doing some kind of division between verbal and quant, like maybe 40-60, or maybe day 1 is verbal, day 2 is quant, that kind of thing. So you have to really make one of these personalized study schedules pretty much as soon as possible. Now, it's okay to deviate from it. So like, let's say, for example, you make a schedule and then you try it out for a week and you realize it was either too ambitious or not ambitious enough. Then yeah, feel free to revise your schedule. I don't know if any of you guys listen to Dave Ramsey. He's like a financial guy, and he's big into this idea of budgeting. And basically, he says like every dollar that comes into your account should have a plan or a name. Like they should know where it goes. And let's say for example, someone's budget is $3,000. So Dave Ramsey actually recommends you sit down like with your spouse or by yourself, and you actually plan every one of these damn dollars, like where it's going. So for example, 1,200 is going to rent. Well, that's easy because of course you got to pay your rent, right? What becomes a lot harder is how you're going to allocate these remaining dollars. And he says that your first budget is probably going to be terrible. It's just going to be way off. So what you need to do is you need to use that data and that feedback and adjust it, your second data. And of course, the metaphor here is going to be time. So we're not talking about money, we're talking about time. So someone, like I said before, the single mom, she might only have 1 to 2 hours a day to budget. Right? And keep in mind, you're going to be exhausted. So if you make an overly ambitious plan, what I typically see is I see a lot of burnout. people just getting so fed up, and then, this is when you see the Reddit post. I hate this test. This test is unfair. Typically, what I see is people going a little bit too hard at the study, and then we get this kind of negative reaction, this negative pushback. Okay. Any questions about that? All right. Cool. No questions. Okay. Well, let me take a quick drink. Hold on. I'm drinking green tea. All right. Now, the second thing is you have to do a practice test schedule. So we've already talked about this. We have these ETS practice tests. Just to review, we have 2 in the OG, we have 2 free ones online, and we have 3 paid ones online. So in total, we have 7 tests. Do you need 7 tests? Can someone raise their hand and actually answer that? Do you think doing 7 tests is a good idea? Okay, Joanna, what do you think?
I assume the answer is going to be no.
Yeah, why do you think I'll say no?
I think you just wanted to kind of go out this first test and see, and see what needs to be done first.
The main reason why I think doing 7 tests is bad is because it emphasizes quantity over quality. It's kind of like, I don't know if any of you guys are golfers. I grew up playing golf, and I'm very guilty of this. Like, I would tell my mom, I'm going to go practice golf, and I would just go hit 200 balls at the range. And of course, I'm not a good golfer today. And the reason I'm not a good golfer is because I thought that quantity was better than quality. So my advice for you would probably be 1 practice test a month. Okay, but let me kind of qualify that a little bit. When I say 1 practice test, I don't mean practice. I mean treat the thing like a real test, like as much as possible. So what that means is you turn off your cell phone, you wake up at 8 a.m. in the morning, you have a breakfast, you do the writing, right? You do the test as kind of realistic as possible in order to really simulate that experience. A lot of people, what they do with their practice test is they will take a break, or they will do something, they'll cook dinner, and then they'll come back to it. And obviously this is going to give skewed results. So in sum, let's say you have 3 months of studying, I would probably do a diagnostic, 1 practice test after 1 month, and then another practice test after another month, and then maybe 1 more. Okay, any questions about that? Cool, all right. Okay, here we go. Doctor, what's up, doctor?
Hello, Vic, how are you?
I am doing phenomenal. How are you?
I'm fine. I have a question. I had 1.5 months for the test. I already registered for the theory test in December, and I already do my diagnostic test. And I think that how much I have 8 to 9 hours per day for reading or for study. How can I improve my quantity is quite good, but my verbal is not good as I expected. And how can I improve my verbal part? And how can I utilize my practice test?
So your practice test should be like a major review session, like kind of when you do the strengths and the weaknesses, and try to be as specific as possible. So for example, how did you do on the sentence equivalence questions? So you had 8 of these. Precisely how many did you get correct? How did you do on the text completion questions? You had 12 of these. Precisely how many did you get correct? For the quantitative, the geometry and the algebra and the data, try to be as specific as possible, because that will allow you to work on your weaknesses in the month until your test. Now, another thing that I would do is I would work on specific skills. So you have a month or a month and a half until your test, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you able to simplify sentences? I don't mean answer questions correctly. I mean, are you able to take a passage and simplify them?
Yeah, I do, but it takes long time.
Yeah, so that's what I would work on. I would work on these specific skills. Are you able to use pairing strategy?
It's working good for me.
Yeah, so that's good. If it's working good for you, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Are you able to skip questions? A lot of people aren't.
No,
a lot of people get into a personal battle with a question, and they refuse to give up. Are you that guy, or are you that guy who can skip questions?
I'm not skipping the question. That's my problem.
Yeah, so you get into these personal battles, right? These persons say, I have to solve this question, I have to solve this question. So that's what I'm talking about. You need to not do practice problems. You need to actually work on specific skills.
Okay, I understand.
Okay.
I understand.
Good question. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to step 6. You need to scaffold your practice. Okay. Now, before I actually tell you what that means, does anyone want to take a stab at it? What do I mean by scaffold your practice? No volunteers? No brave souls? All right, I'll give about 10 more. Okay, here. Troy, what do I mean by scaffold your practice?
I would say just like keeping it organized as best you can.
Yeah, so it's definitely organized, but there's one more component to it. Does anyone know? Okay, Abdullah, what do you think I mean?
I think you mean that try to be flexible and try to be flexible with your plan according to the outputs that you're getting from the tests and questions.
Not exactly. How about Kamal? What do you think, Kamal?
So actually, I mean that you build on skill on skill. Like if you develop a verbal, then you give it enough sense and equivalence. So reading.
Yeah, exactly. So what it means is you build skills on skills. That was a good answer. I like that. So what you should actually start with is a foundation. Now, a foundation in verbal and a foundation in math are 2 different things. So on the GRE, your foundation in verbal is going to be vocabulary. You cannot do the strategies without vocabulary. It's impossible. You need vocabulary. And you need about 500 to 1,000 words. I know that sucks, but there's really no way around it. And then obviously for the quant, the foundation is just going to be math concepts. Okay? Not GRE questions, just literally math concepts, like something you would learn in Khan Academy. All right? Now, after that, you actually need to see strategy modeling. So strategy modeling is basically when you watch someone like me or some other test tutor employing strategies or attacking the test in a specific way. Now remember, these strategies depend on vocab for verbal and depend on the math concepts for math, right? So one way to do that would be to watch my videos, but you don't have to watch my videos. I'm not trying to self-promote here too much. You can get strategy from other places. You can even get strategy from third-party test prep companies. My main concern with third-party test prep companies is they don't use ETS questions and the cost, obviously, right? So you can definitely get strategy modeling from a variety of places, okay? After that, you need to do what's called basically deliberate practice. Now, deliberate practice is actually a kind of a scientific concept. Has anyone ever heard of the 10,000-hour rule? Does anyone want to raise their hand and tell us what that means? Kamal, is your hand up? Kamal, do you know what this is?
Yeah, in the book called Mastery, I think they have said that you need.
So far, I'm just been getting the feedbacks from half of the GRE questions, and I think it's enough. And from this much video only, I have come to a conclusion that I need to do a quick check, do a test just to check my current capacity. And to do that, I think it's okay to use free online courses, online tests. And before that, I need to learn the question structures so that I can give my best. Uh, give my best just to be accurate with the question structure. And even if I'm wrong, it would be lack of it would be due to lack of my knowledge on the topic, and not because of the lack of knowledge about the question itself. I'll be right back after a short toilet break. Who? Let's see if the streaming is going on. How the streaming is going. Well, I'm now confident that nothing will happen. Such as no such thing will happen like copyright strike, because I can't understand a thing about what I'm saying right now. I cannot reuse this material, so I hope I will be exempted from severe punishments if they somehow get a sniff of it. And as I always say, I won't be practicing if I'm not recording myself doing this stuff.
You need to practice 10,000 hours to master any skill.
Right, but there's actually a caveat there. Does anyone know what the caveat is of the qualification? Yes, you do need to practice 10,000 hours, but there's one other component to this that's important. Does anyone know? Okay, Rahul, what's the other component here?
You need to do the right practice.
Yeah, you need to do what's called deliberate practice. And what this means is you're actually specifically working on something specific. So like, let's say, for example, I'm doing reading. I'm actually going to work on simplifying sentences, or I'm going to work on identifying functions, or I'm going to work on answering the questions before looking at the choices, stuff like this, right? Okay, yeah, good job. Thank you for answering. And then for the quant, of course, for deliberate practice, you're going to be working on things like choosing numbers, skipping questions, going in a random order, trying to find easy points, working backwards, things of this nature. And then finally, the fourth step of this process is going to be time practice. So this is when we kind of bring in the element of time, the element of pressure, the element of nervousness. So let's imagine that I have 4 hours a day to study. What would I do with my study? Let's imagine I'm doing verbal. So I would probably do 30 minutes to an hour of vocab. That's how I would start my day. I would then probably spend about an hour watching this crazy guy, Greg Rapp, on his videos, something like that. I would then spend about an hour trying to do that technique that I just watched, trying to implement that specific technique. And then finally, I would spend my final hour doing time practice. This is what I envision as scaffolded practice. All right, any questions about that? Okay, cool. I must be explaining things pretty well then. All right, no questions at all? Okay, here we go, Joanna.
Can you explain a little further of how it also looks like when we're trying to implement the skill?
Yeah, so let's say you watch a video of mine about the pairing strategy. Okay, for example. I don't know if you're familiar with that. If you are, no problem, you can watch the video. Then you would actually deliberately find, let's say, 20 sentence equivalent questions, by yourself. And you wouldn't actually work on getting the right answer, because the right answer in deliberate practice is not that important. You would then, just in those 20 questions, really try the pairing strategy, for example. Does that make sense?
Got it. So basically just trying to adopt the strategies with the given problems.
Yeah, and you have to be very deliberate. That's why it's called deliberate practice, which means it actually takes some planning. Like you're going to say, okay, today I'm going to work on simplifying the sentences, or today I'm going to work on rephrasing the reading questions, because I find that a lot of people don't actually understand the questions that they read. So that's kind of what I mean by that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Rahul, do you have a question, or is your hand just up by accident?
Sorry for mistake.
Okay, no problem. Okay. All right, so that's kind of how I envision my practice to go. And then before we move on, the big book is perfect for this, because the big book, each test has 2 verbal sections. So you'll notice that this lends itself very well. Well, one of the sections can be your deliberate practice, and the other section can be your time practice. Something like that. All right, let's go. We have some questions. Okay, Fatima, how are you, Fatima? Maybe you have to turn on your mic or unmute. I think you have to hit unmute. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, I have a question about, because I'm struggling with the time practice. Is there any tips for time practice besides record or putting a timer?
Yeah, I mean, the main goal of time practice is very different than the goal of deliberate practice. So in time practice, you only have one goal and one goal only, and that is to maximize your score. Right? So let's say, for example, you're doing 20 questions time. I don't care about one question in particular. It's not important. All I care about is this number at the end. It's the only thing I care about. So like, for example, if it's 12, but it could have been 15, I want you to do whatever you can to make that number 15. If that means skipping questions, if that means using strategies, whatever you can do to make that number as high as possible. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're doing here. We're trying to maximize the score. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Risky, you have a question?
Hello, Greg, can you hear me? Yep. Yeah, I have one question. So in solving TC or SC questions, I'm struggling a lot with guessing the words before I look at the answer choices, probably because I'm not a native speaker. Do you have any advice how to practically build the skills, just reading or doing vocab or any other advice?
Yeah, it's going to be a combination of a lot of things, right? It's going to be building your vocab, number one. It's going to be building your ability to recognize whether the 2 parts support or contrast, right? And some of that depends on vocab, some of that depends on punctuation, for example. And it's also going to be improving your knowledge of syntax. You know what syntax is?
Grammar?
Yeah, it's basically learning how an English sentence is constructed.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's easy. It's definitely a hard test. There's no guarantees, but those would be the things that I would work on.
Okay.
Kamal, you have a question?
Yeah.
Oops, sorry, I disabled your microphone. Sorry, Kamal, go ahead.
So I have a question regarding deliberate practice. Okay, so my vocab is a little bit weak. So I'm solving easy question and I see an option with a word I'm unfamiliar with. Okay, so I've guessed the word correctly, but do I need to check this meaning and look up it?
Yeah, good question. So in the first attempt, force yourself to choose one. Force yourself to choose. Okay, but then in deliberate practice, because we don't care about time, right? Then you can use a dictionary to look up the meaning of that word, but only if you're actually going to commit that word to memory. If you're just going to look up the word, oh, that's interesting, and then 5 minutes later you forget the word, well, that's not very helpful, right?
Okay. So I keep a book besides one of the words I learned during solving the question. I keep a separate note.
I think that's a great idea. I think that's a fabulous idea. Yeah. Okay, good. All right, let's move on. Step 7, pay attention to feedback and data. Right? So you are going to be getting data every day in the form of questions correct or questions wrong. Use this to figure out how you need to course correct. So like, let's say, for example, I do 10 reading questions and I get 2 correct. Something is fundamentally wrong with my reading approach. It could be the strategy I tried didn't work. It could be my vocabulary is limited. But whatever it is, I need to change something. Right? I actually need to incorporate this data into my study approach and alter the way I approach these reading passages. Now, you might change your reading approach, and the next day is 1 out of 10. And you go, okay, that didn't work. And then you adjust again, right? So you really need to kind of incorporate this data as a feedback mechanism so you know what to do, or at least you know what to try in subsequent days. So really pay attention to that data. The best way to pay attention to it is what's called an error log. So an error log, actually, any volunteers with an error log? Okay, Joanna, what's an error log?
Yeah, I think I remember that on Reddit, there were a couple of users that shared their error log samples of, it was like an Excel sheet, and they separated by category. They had the problem written down, and they created this error log where I think the green, they shaded if they had the answer correct, they would shade green, but if they had it wrong, it would be shaded red. And every attempt that they were trying to record for each question, they would be able to log back and change the results.
Exactly. So they were getting like this repository of their weaknesses, right? And they go, okay, I'm doing very well on text completion questions, but you can see my sentence equivalent questions are terrible. So maybe I need to try the pairing strategy, or maybe the pairing strategy didn't work. So Albert Einstein, it's apocryphal. There's a GRE error for you, which means maybe not true. But this quote is often attributed to Albert Einstein, which is that doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results is the definition of insanity. So what you need to do is use this feedback and data to course correct. Okay? So hopefully that makes sense to everybody. Thank you, Joanna. All right, so we're running out of time. How about we go through these other steps relatively quickly? So number 8, experiment with your study and strategies. We just talked about that. Don't be afraid to try something new. The analogy that I often like to use is, I've been to many foreign countries, primarily in Asia, and what I would often see is I would see a Western tourist come to the country, and the very first restaurant they would go to is like KFC or McDonald's, something like that. And the reason is obvious. The reason is we are comfortable with the familiar. Even when the familiar doesn't work for us, we are still comfortable with it as humans. It's kind of this human nature thing, which is why you see so many people in bad relationships. Everyone knows it's a bad relationship, but they stay together. It's so weird. Why? Well, there's comfort in the familiar. And if you kind of remove that security blanket, things can go awry. So that's why I'm telling you, you need to remove that security blanket and experiment with various strategies. And even if that means you're using strategies that aren't mine, sure. Again, there's no self-aggrandizement here. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. My strategies are something I want you to try. They're not something I want you to do. See the difference? Right? If my strategies for some reason just aren't working and you've given it a fair shake, try something else. And I'll be more than happy to kind of help you along that journey. All right, so step 9, join a GRE community. Very important. A lot of people feel very lonely with this test. You need to join some kind of GRE community. Here's my recommendations. Our GRE. I spent a lot of time here answering people's questions. Discord. We now have the GregNet Discord channel. And you can also join the GregNet Plus Discord channel. So I actually have 2 of those. There's also a GRE Discord channel that's occasionally posted on the Reddit. And there's also a website called like GREprep.com or Prep Club, I think that's what it's called. The point stands, you need to join some kind of community here to help you out on the journey for 2 reasons. Number 1, it will make you less lonely. And number 2 is, someone raise your hand, answer this question. What's the best way to learn something? You want to volunteer and answer? All right, Fatima, what's the best way to learn something? Okay, we'll come back to you. Rafiat, what's the best way to learn something? We have 3 people who need to unmute their mics. Unmute the mics. Okay, here we go. Rafiat, what's the best way to learn something? Hello? Okay, Cal, what's the best way to learn something?
To learn from your mistakes or other people's mistakes?
Not a bad guess, but what I have found, feel free to disagree, the best way to learn something is to teach it. So when you're in a GRE community and somebody asks a question that you kind of know the answer to, and you find yourself start explaining this answer, I find that you assimilate that information so damn quickly, which is probably why I was able to do well in the GRE. It's just like in constantly teaching it, you start learning how it works, Okay? All right, so finally, step number 10, don't neglect your emotional health. Okay? A couple things you want to avoid, burnout. Okay? Number 2, frustration. Right? Number 3, anxiety. At the end of the day, it's just a test. That's all it is. Okay? Play the game. And try to do the best you can, to play the game the best you can. And remember, if you get a 310 and your goal was a 330, is your life over? The answer is no. So in high school, a lot of people get like 4.4 GPA, for example, and then they go to university, like UCLA, for example, and then do you know how many people care about this? 0 people. 0, not 1. So same thing with the GRE. If you use the 310 to go to a school like, I don't know, let's say, for example, you go to, let's say a UC that's not as good as UCLA. Let's say you go to UC Riverside. Is UC Riverside a bad school? Not even close. It's a great school. You can do amazing things at UC Riverside, right? We have to lose our obsession with this name brand. This name brand, I have to go to Harvard. It's Harvard or bust. First of all, Harvard costs an arm and a leg. I don't want people spending $60,000 a year to learn English literature, for example. To me, that doesn't make sense. You can learn English literature for free at the library. Right, that's number 1. Number 2, they've done studies, and yes, Harvard people make more money, that's true, but they also have a lot more debt. So at the end of the day, you can still have a very successful life by going to a state school or by going to even like a kind of that low-cost school near your house. The goal is, once you get into university, forget about the GRE and just spend as much of your effort as possible as doing well in your program. Meet your professors, have good relationships with your professors, do some research, do all of these things that will help you after you graduate from university. And I promise you, in like 2 or 3 years, you won't give a damn about the GRE. All All right, guys, that is it for this class. Does anyone have any questions? Maybe I'll take 2 questions. Now, remember, this will be recorded, so you can kind of review it, any information we talked about. Cecilia, you have a question?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, hey, how are you?
Hi, yes, I noticed you haven't mentioned much about the analytical writing part, like the issue essay and argument essay. I was wondering, what is a better way to prep? Because when I took my GRE, I kind of like went into a flake mode when I started writing my essay, and I didn't get the score that I wanted. So how exactly do I start? Like, what should I do to prepare myself besides looking at the GRE full essays?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a good question. So let me tell you why I ignored it, first of all. If you consider writing verbal quant, writing is the least important of the 3, so that's number 1. Number 2, the class is only an hour. Number 3, I'm going to have writing classes, so we can actually talk about writing in those classes as well. But really quickly, what I would recommend is watch my 2 step-by-step videos. Have you done that?
I think I've seen one.
Yeah, so you definitely want to kind of assimilate as much of that information as possible.
Okay.
For most people, it works pretty well. It gives you a template for you to follow. Yeah. But if you're interested in writing, we will have more specific classes coming up in the Greg class.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, and let's do one more question. How about Doctor? All right, Doctor, finish us out here.
Okay, I have a problem in burnout, frustration, and anxiety. That is the main problem of mine.
What's the main problem? Sorry, say again. What's the main problem?
Anxiety, frustration, and burnout.
How can you work on it? Here, okay, let me tell you my secret. Have fun. I'm not joking. When I do a GRE question, I have a damn good time because I admire the art of building a question. Whenever I get tricked, I go, oh, you got me good, you tricked me good. So as much as possible, try to have fun with it. If you treat it like a chore or you treat it like something you hate, well, of course you're going to hate it. So if possible, try to find the love in it. Okay, do you think you can do that?
Yes, I can do it, inshallah.
So are you having fun with GregMath Plus, for example? Like, was this a terrible hour?
I really love it. I really love it.
Was this a terrible hour? Did you hate me? No, right? So it is possible to have fun with GRE, which is what I try to convey in my YouTube videos. It doesn't have to be so dry and so boring, right? You can use movies and you can use pop culture and things like that to spice it up. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Doctor. All right, everyone, this has been fun. This has been great. I hope you learned some stuff, and I will put the recording up probably sometime tonight. All right, everybody, until next time, if you have any questions, go ahead and chat to me on Discord. Talk to you all later.
I think I should search somewhere to stream my mobile phone OBS Studio.
Hey everybody, welcome to Thoughts on the New GRE. How's everybody doing today? Me, myself, I'm getting over a little bit of a cold if I sound a little bit nasally. Yesterday was worse. Yesterday was a lot worse. Today's actually pretty good, to be honest. Yeah, how's everybody doing? Doing good, take care, doing great. Happy Teacher's Day. Is today Teacher's Day? Yep, somebody says the quant and vocab mountain is slow. Yes, it is slow. That's because we're collecting all the data so that it syncs between devices. Hopefully in the next couple of days, maybe a week at most, things will be back to normal, and then you'll be able to use it on your phone, and you'll be able to use it on your laptop, and your desktop, and whatever device that you want. Cool, everybody. Who's planning on taking the new GRE? Anybody? Wow, a lot of you. Okay. So I think this is going to be a relevant discussion. Let's go ahead and dive in. I've already looked at the free practice test on the ETS website several times, so I think I've come to some conclusions that I would like to share with you. And of course, I'm going to put this class in the study plan, the 1 month and the 2 month for those people who are planning on taking the new GRE. Okay, let's go ahead and dive into it, everybody. So the very first thing we're going to start with is the issue essay. Now, the reason why I'm even showing you the issue essay here is because all of the issue essays and argument prompts are already shown, so they're already on the website. And the second reason is this is a little bit disappointing because this is the same exact essay that you can find on PowerPrep 1. The reason why this is disappointing, of course, is because ETS refuses to release new questions for some reason. Yeah, they're refusing to release new questions for some reason, which is unfortunate. The second thing that I want to point out is they got rid of the argument essay. The reason why they got rid of the argument essay is, in my hypothesis, is if you compare the argument essay and the issue essay, which one is easier to gain? Yeah, the argument is a lot easier to gain. Now, what exactly do we mean by gain? We mean essentially if you follow a template, you can kind of get away with getting a 4, 5, or 6, even if you're not a great writer. The reason being is you don't have to think of any ideas, because all of the ideas are in front of you already. And so if you just memorize certain phrases, memorize certain kind of paragraph structures, stuff like that, you can kind of get away with a lot. Now, in the issue essay, you can't really do that, because you have to come up with your own ideas, whether they be real-life examples or hypothetical examples. So yeah, that's my theory. I don't know if it's true. I don't have an insider at ETS, but that's my theory. Okay, now let's move on to the meat of this. It's still kind of annoying that you have to start with the writing. You guys, have you ever taken the real test and just are so eager to get to the verbal and the quant, and they start with the damn writing section? You're like, oh, why can't I do this at the end? Why do I have to do this at the very beginning? So that's what I was kind of doing. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the meat of this. So first change, everybody. The first verbal section and quant section is only 12 questions. Of course, before this, how many questions was it? 20. It was 20 questions. And how much time did you have? 30 minutes. On average, how much time is that per question, everybody? 1.5 minutes. So if we take a look here, 12 and 18, has that changed, the average time per question? No, it has not. So a lot of people always ask me, what's different? What's different about the new GRE? Oh my God, it's going to be so different. My response is not really. Not really. I mean, if you're good at the old version, you should be good at this one. You have the same amount of time on average per section. But of course, we do have some slight changes. So remember, in the current version, or the old version, depending on how you want to look at it, we have 6 TC questions, we have 4 SC questions, and we have 10 reading questions. So 6 TC out of 20, and this, of course, is a total of 20 questions. What's 6 divided by 20? What percentage is that, everybody? That is 30%. 4 SE is going to be 20%, and of course 10R is going to be 50%. So let's take a look at the current version of the test and if they've actually maintained that. Here we go. So this is the first text completion question. As you can see, it's a 1 blanker. Then we have another text completion question, which is a 2 blanker. So that's another change. In the current version of the test, how many 1 blankers do you usually have per section? Usually you have 2 of those. So it seems like now they're only doing one 1 blanker. So then you have a 2 blanker, then you have a 3 blanker, and oops, that's it. Only 3 text completion questions. That's interesting. Wow, okay. So here we go. In the new version, we have 3 TC. Right. What's 3 divided by 12, everybody? Isn't that 25%? Do we all agree with that? Okay, so in the new version of the test, text completion accounts for 25% of the first section. Let's take a look at sentence equivalence. Here's the first sentence equivalence. Here's the second one. Here's the third one. And here is the 4 out of 12. Are you kidding me? That's crazy. Let's go ahead and write this down. 4 sentence equivalence questions. That hasn't even changed. Even though they reduced the test, the section, by 8 questions, you still have the exact same number of sentence equivalence questions. What is going on there? Of course, that is approximately going to be 33%. So as you can see, vocab accounts for what, 58% of the first section? So any vocab fans here? Any vocab fans? If you're a vocab fan, you like this. You like this. This is your jam. Yeah, this is, you should be happy right now. Does anybody hate reading? If you hate reading, again, you're going to like this first section, because how many reading questions are there? Only 5. That's it. 5 reading questions. That's it. What's 5 divided by 12? I'm assuming it's about approximately 42%, right? So everyone, this is quite strange. This is quite strange because the criticism of the GRE is that it requires you to learn vocabulary that's not that important. Have you guys ever heard that criticism? Who uses these words? That's kind of a common refrain you hear of people who attack the GRE. So ETS, at least for the first section, they didn't make vocab less important. They made it more important. Quite strange. Quite strange. Any thoughts so far? Any questions? Any concerns? Now remember, we haven't talked about the second section yet. So things might balance themselves out in the second section. Okay, let's take a brief pause here. I'll take a sip of water. Does anyone have any questions so far? Let's go to Shrey. What's up, Shrey?
Hi, Greg. So now both the sections will still carry equal weightage, or it is according to the number of questions?
Oh, man, that's a good question. I don't know. Because of course in the old test, each section had 20 questions, right? But in this one, you have 12 and 15. I think I seem to remember reading an ETS document one time that said every question is worth the same weightage. They didn't say every section is worth the same weightage. So if I had to guess, it's by the number of questions. But to be honest, I'm not sure. Yeah. Is it still section adaptive? It definitely is still section adaptive. And what that means, everybody, is if you do very well on these 12 questions, your second section is going to be hard. If you do okay, your second section is going to be medium. And if you do badly, your second section is going to be easy. I don't know exactly what those numbers are yet. I'm going to have to play around with the free PowerPoint test to figure that out. Let's go to Bonnie. Hey, Bonnie.
Yeah, hi. Actually, I have the same question as the previous caller about the marking scheme. But I have another question. Like, this is the free mock displayed by the ETS. They have uploaded the new pattern ETS mock, which you are showing right now.
Yep. This is the free ETS mock, and I don't want to spoil the questions for anybody. So this morning I woke up at 5 a.m. to put these blue boxes.
Yeah, but I see they have picked these questions from the previous mocks.
Yep, exactly. So if you guys are familiar with the previous mocks, the free ones, I'm assuming most, if not all of these questions come from the free mocks, PP1 and PP2. You're going to be quite disappointed. You're going to be quite disappointed because these questions are the exact same. Why does ETS refuse to put out new questions? I don't know. I mean, it's only 12 questions. Come on, ETS. It's not that many, right?
Yes, I was thinking of like taking it so that I can see where I stand now and how will I perform on the new pattern. But
yep, unfortunately you can't unless you just haven't seen these before. Now they are going to release a PowerPoint Plus for the new version of the test. My guess is it's going to be the exact same price despite being half the length. For those of you who don't know, it's currently $40 for PP Plus. I'm assuming that it's going to still be $40, and I'm also assuming that the questions are either going to come from PP Plus 1, PP Plus 2, or PP Plus 3, which again means no new questions, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Cool. All right, let's do one more question before we move on. Let's go to John. Hey, John. I think you're muted there, John. Going one? Oh, there we go. Hey, is your name John?
Yeah, I just wanted to
get the split of CR and RC.
Okay, we'll talk about that right now. Yeah, we'll talk about that right now. Yeah. So let's actually dive into the specifics. So this is a one blinker, obviously, math strategy most of the time. This is a two blinker, math strategy most of the time. This is a three blinker, math strategy. This is a critical reasoning test, a critical reasoning question. How do I know this is a critical reasoning question, everybody? Two reasons. Number one, it's a very short passage, as you can see. And number two, it says, if true, most seriously undermines the argument. So CR has not disappeared. How do we feel about that? Is that? I'm sorry, CR has not disappeared. Okay, the next thing I want to show you guys is, at least in the medium and the hard section, I can't find any long passages. I cannot find any long passages. At least in the medium and the hard one, because the next one we're going to look at is hard. So as you can see, this is a short passage right here. This is a short passage, same passage. So, okay, let's actually dive into the question types. Because a lot of people ask me, is the new GRE different? I keep telling them no, they're testing you on exactly the same thing that the current version tests you on. So this is a critical reasoning, which of course is not a change. That's still from the old one. This right here is a function question. Are you guys familiar with the identify function strategy? Identify function. Okay, so that hasn't disappeared at all. That's not new. Right? This right here, we're going to talk about sentence equivalence, sentence equivalence, sentence equivalence, sentence equivalence. Okay, what kind of question is this one? Any volunteers? Based on information contained in the passage, blue box, would most closely blue box, blue box. Any volunteers? What kind of question is this? So the part four, what kind of question is this? You're auto.
Maybe inference.
Yeah, this is an inference question. What's the clue that gives you inference here?
Most closely.
Yeah, it's the word would, right? Because if the answer actually appeared here, would they use the phrase would most closely? No, they wouldn't. They would say like according to the passage or something like this. So again, inference question, a very popular one in the current version or the old version of the test, and that is not different in the new version. That's an inference question. What kind of question is this one? What kind of question is this one? This is a vocab in context question. Again, this is no different from the old version of the test, nothing different, same thing. And then finally, this is the last one of section number one. What is this one? What kind of question is this one? In order to, this again is going to be a function question, an author's purpose question. So notice in all of these reading questions, in all of these reading questions, we have no detail questions. So this is a function, this is a vocab in context, this is an inference question. If we come back to this one, this is a function question. And if we come back to this one, this is a critical reasoning. So there's no freebies here. There's no freebies here. Some of you guys are saying, with fewer questions, are they going to make it a little bit more challenging? Maybe they'll choose questions that are a little bit more challenging, because they're not going to throw in as many freebies or as many easy ones. Now, before you panic, everybody, remember, if it's more difficult for you, is it more difficult for everybody? Yeah, it's more difficult for everybody. Okay, so don't panic. All right, before we move on to the quant, any questions? Any questions, anybody, before we move on to the quant? Let's go to Yajna Sini. Yajna, did I say that even close to correct?
Yeah.
Okay, how's it going? Yeah, I can hear you.
It's actually
Are you on AirPods? Yeah, the AirPod quality is not very good. Keep your hand up, remove the AirPods, go to your laptop or something, I'll come back to you. Let's go to Sinhuja. Sinhuja, what's up? Yeah, I can also hear the background noise too.
Oh my god, I'm so sorry. Outdoors.
Okay, no problem. What's up?
Okay, so my question is, since the maps of the entire GRE is the same, would the question be meaning more penalty for each wrong question?
Okay, so I muted you because I understand your question. So I think the question is the weightage of each question going to increase? The answer is yes. So that means if you get one wrong, you're more likely to fall down the percentiles. But remember, before everybody panics, isn't that true for everybody, not just for you? That's true for everybody, not just for you. So remember, the whole purpose of the GRE test is to rank people, put them in order, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. It's not an absolute test. What that means is, like, take the TOEFL, for example. In theory, is it possible for everybody who takes the TOEFL to score a 120? Yes, that is possible. Now, that doesn't happen, but it is possible. It is possible. However, in the GRE, is it possible for every single person to score a 340? Yes or no? No, it is not. Because remember, it is a ranking system. That's all it is. It is a ranking system. Okay, let's do one more question. We'll go back to Yajna Sini, see if we got the AirPods. Hey, Yajna Sini, did you get the AirPods out? Hello? Hey, yeah, are you still on the AirPods? Yeah, the AirPods, for some reason, the microphone doesn't work well. And so, yeah, I know. I like AirPods, but for some reason, the microphone does not work well. All right, let's go to last question. Let's go to Saloni. Hey, Saloni, what's up?
Hi, Greg. This is my first class with you.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to ask if, after giving the exam, how will I know if I've done well? Like, a lot of colleges that I'm targeting have like the threshold score, like
you get the score immediately. You get the score right after you take it.
Right, but like some colleges have their scores defined, right? Like 153 per verbal, 155 per point. So will the scoring remain the same?
Yep, the scoring will remain the same. Yep. Put it this way: if you can get a 320 on the old version of the GRE, in my opinion, your score on the new version is going to be roughly the same.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people are panicking about the scoring here, but to me, I think it's going to be mostly the same.
All right. Thank you.
Now, some people say, well, wait a minute, this is harder because if I get more questions wrong, that means my score is going to fall down more quickly than it would on the old version of the test. And then, of course, my response is, well, wait a minute, though, it's only 2 hours long and you don't feel fatigued. So you're less likely to make a mistake due to fatigue. So it all washes out, everybody. No need to panic. And even if your score does go down, you can always take it again. And even if you can't take it again, you can always go to a university that doesn't require the GRE. And even if you don't go to university, you can always do an alternative career path that makes you rich and successful and starting a business. And even if that's not the case, you can, of course, go meditate on the top of the mountain and realize it's all pointless anyway. Right? So don't worry. You guys are going to be fine no matter what. Okay. All right, let's go to the quant. Quant, everybody. So again, 12 questions, 21 minutes. All right, remember, in the old version of the test, we had 20 questions for 35 minutes. How much time is that per question, everybody? We might have to do a little bit of math here. Let's see. 35 divided by 20, 1.75, and if we multiply that by 60, it's 105 seconds. 105 seconds. Is my math correct there? Is my math correct there? Is that right? Okay, good. That would be embarrassing, right? All right, let's look at the new one. So in the new one, we have 21 minutes divided by 12. Oh, it's the same, 1.75. It's literally the same. So nothing has changed. Okay, let's go and dive into it, everybody. So you start with a QC question, which of course this is geometry. How do I know it's geometry? Well, they give you a circle with a triangle in it. So clearly that's geometry. Another geometry question, ETS, you are on drugs here. Back-to-back geometry. Okay, this is going to be an algebra question. Algebra question. The only reason I'm saying algebra is just because you have two variables, right? But it seems like they're testing kind of, see, this is where it gets kind of weird, because sometimes you're not sure whether it's an arithmetic question or an algebra question, and you say, well, why would this be an arithmetic question? Because it's using inequalities, right? But then you say, okay, but algebra can use inequalities. Well, yeah, that's the point, right? So it's not always a clear-cut line here. But we'll call it algebra. The next one is another QC question, and of course, if we use a word like range and list, what kind of question are we talking about here? This is a data analysis question. Okay, so I think that's it for the QC questions, everybody. There are 4 of them. Is that good news or bad news? I don't know. How do you feel about that? You guys feel good? Okay, you guys cool with that? So that's 33%. So remember, in the current version of the test, you usually have 8 QC questions. You usually have, let's call it 10 multiple choice, 1 multiple select, and 1 numeric entry. Now, this is not written in stone, everybody. This is not written in stone, because sometimes you have 2 multiple selects, sometimes 7 QCs. But that's basically the breakdown. So in this new version, we have 4 QCs, at least for the first section. Okay. And then the first QC is geometry, algebra, and data analysis. Okay, let's go to this. This is our first multiple choice question. I would call this an arithmetic question, even though they're using X and Y. Anyone in the chat box, why do I call this an arithmetic question? Yeah, you see the digit? See how they're talking about the digit? That's a very arithmetic concept heavy right there. Let's go arithmetic heavy concept. So here's the chart. So the charts have not disappeared. The charts have not disappeared. Okay, the charts are there. But here's the thing. They're there only in the first section. Let me repeat. The charts are only in the first section. So your second section, whether it be easy, medium, or hard, the charts have disappeared. How do we feel about that? Thank God. That's kind of funny you guys are happy about that, because I find the charts to be very easy. I usually call the charts easy money, but everybody is a little bit different, right? Everybody's a little bit different. Yeah. Okay, so clearly this is a data analysis question. Charts fall under data analysis. Why did I put the dot above the S? And what is it testing? It seems to be testing arithmetic. So this is what I mean by things can get kind of blurry. Things can get kind of blurry here, like determining if is it arithmetic, is it data analysis. Go to the next one. Here's the next chart question. So what percent greater? Again, that's a very arithmetic concept. But these still fall under data analysis, at least for the diagnostic report. And then here's the third one. If each of the average ratings, so this is just purely a data analysis one right there. Purely data analysis. So 3 charts. Remember, that's no different than the current version, the old version of the test. In one section, you do have 3 chart questions. The main difference is in the second section that we're going to look at pretty soon here, no charts. Charts are gone. So only 3 charts. Charts have been cut in half. I don't know how you feel about that. All right, moving on, everybody. Here we have what appears to be a geometry question. I don't really think so, even though they're talking about land and feet. I think the way it's presented is kind of as an algebra question. The reason why I bring that up is because on the old version of the test, the current version, you have 4 things that are tested. Arithmetic, algebra, that's confusing, geometry, and data analysis. Which one of these is tested the least on the old version of the test? It's geometry. So out of 20 questions, you get 3 here, 5 here, 5 here, and 7. The reason why this is so strange is because in the shorter version of the test, at least in section 1, we've already had 2 geometry questions back to back, and arguably a third one right here. So this is very strange. For some reason, this free practice test seems to be weighting heavily geometry. I don't know why. Okay. And then look, this is 100% a geometry question. Diameter of circle C. So even if we call this an algebra question, this is clearly a geometry question. So in the first section here, we have 3 geometry questions. Do we have any more? Let's take a look. Nope, that's it. Okay. But that's weird. That's weird because in the current version, the old version of the test, they don't weight geometry that highly, but this test seems to weight it very highly. Maybe that's just a fluke of the practice exam. Hard to say for sure. All right, and then anything else we want to talk about? Here's a numeric entry. This is a numeric entry, obviously. You have to write down the answer. And this is a multiple select. For those of you who don't remember, in most multiple select questions, what are you trying to do? Any volunteers? What's the goal in a multiple select question? So Kate, hey Kate.
We try to find the extreme cases.
Yep, exactly. You try to find the minimum and the maximum. And then what do we do with all the values in the middle?
We check those and then
we choose them, right? We choose them. And clearly that's exactly what's going on here because look, 1/4 and 1/3, right? Between 1/4 and 1/3. So what we're trying to do is find 2 different values and then choose all the middle values. Cool. And this right here is, so you guys know the old version of the test, question number 20. Is this typically easy, medium, or hard? This is typically hard. It's typically tricky. And I remember from one of the power preps that this is actually the number 20 question. This is the number 20 question. So that hasn't changed. The 12th question, this is the 12th question, right? The 12th question is still going to be the trickiest. So that has not changed. In fact, we can even say the same for quantitative comparisons. So here is quantitative comparison. This is arguably the trickiest. This one here, the list L. Of course, like I said, that's subjective, but in my opinion, this is arguably the trickiest of the 4. And if we go to the 3rd chart question, this is arguably the trickiest as well. So that hasn't changed. That's very similar to the old version of the test. All right, this is geometry. This is arithmetic. Arithmetic finally getting some love. And this right here is algebra. All right, before we move on to the hard verbal section, any questions? Fahim, what's up, Fahim? Hey, Fahim.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. What's going on?
Good. How are you?
Good. Are you from Bangladesh?
Yeah, I'm from Bangladesh.
I'm getting good. I'm getting good. How's it going? What's up?
Okay, actually cool. So, how are you doing?
Good.
Okay, actually, I'm new today.
Welcome.
So I signed up 1.5 months ago, maybe. But I haven't joined any class of you because of your timing, because I sleep at night at 9:30.
Oh, okay.
So that's like the today's earlier. So actually, my question is not about this topic. I couldn't find the Discord channel.
We don't have a Discord server anymore.
So you talked about in your recording that so many times Discord channel.
Yeah, that was in the beginning. We don't have it anymore. That allows me to focus on other projects like the Quant Mountain, the Vocab Mountain, stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
job, right? So one more question. I'm practicing right now, so reading like artsy practicing. So which articles are similar to the artsy questions? I can practice like New York Times or Scientific American.
In my opinion, because we have so much reading material available to us, you don't really need to use the New York Times or the Economist. And the problem with the New York Times and the Economist is when you read that crap, you just feel depressed, right? Anyone feel that way? Not okay. Yeah, you're practicing English, but then you feel like crap after you read it. It's not like they're talking about curing cancer. They're talking about war, increasing nationalism in pretty much every country in the world. Name one country that's not increasing in nationalism right now. It seems like it's going crazy across the world, right? Yeah. So it's just like what do they call it? Doom scrolling. It's just like that. It's like the Earth is going to blow through the 2 degrees Celsius limit for global warming, and the ocean currents in the Atlantic are going to reverse, and eventually California is going to sink. Yeah. And but there's some good vocabulary here. So with that in mind, the best place to practice reading is going to be the big book, just because of the sheer quantity of reading material. That doesn't make you feel depressed. You get to read about Frederick Douglass, you get to read about jazz, you get to read about, they actually have a passage on El Nino. You get to read about El Nino if you want to. You get to read about, macromolecules and stuff, and you don't feel like crap. All right, let's go to Tejas. What's up, Tejas?
The big book.
Hi, Greg. I just joined the class a few minutes ago, so I wanted to answer this. I wanted to ask you if we have any idea about the number of questions we're going to get from the topics probability and combinations and combinations.
The only thing we can go on is what the free practice test tells us, right? I mean, that's it. And so far, I haven't seen one probability question. Have you?
Not yet.
Yeah, I haven't seen one combinations problem, one. But here's the thing. You still have to study it because you don't know what questions you're going to choose, right? Think about it. They have a big pool of questions. In that pool, is probability there? Combinatorics there? Yes. Right. So even if this practice exam didn't choose those questions from the pool, that doesn't mean they don't exist. So it's still very possible that a future test that you take will pull from that pool, probability, combinatorics. So you can't really skip anything. It's the same thing when I test your vocab, right? My vocab list has 960 words, right? I don't test you on all 960. What do? I randomize it. And I test on 30 of them or 40 of them. But the very act of randomizing it means you still have to study all 960, right?
I understand.
No shortcuts. No shortcuts.
Yes, thank you.
Yep. As much as we want to. Let's go to Raj. Hey, Raj, what's up? You're muted, Raj.
Hello. Hi, Greg.
Hey, what's going on?
Yeah, I'm good. What about you?
Pretty good.
So I just want to ask, every question contains 1 mark.
I think this much is enough for today. Just some few pointers on how to begin the practice sessions, and I hope I can continue my morning live stream, preferably by doing the practice on GRE, and I might even do a little bit of exercises in between. I mean, to keep my body fit, manage some litter, and clean up the room a bit here and there. And for today I will be going to hospital to get my prescription glasses, and there will be some money lost on that too, but I don't mind. I want to feel like a new person, so the change of looks will be a great help. This much for today, and hopefully I'll continue this tomorrow as well. Bye bye.